Welcome to Vulnerability, Introspection and Growth, the podcast where we explore the beautiful, messy and transformative magic that happens when we dare to go within. I'm your host, Robin Harris, and in each episode we'll dive into real, honest stories from people who've faced their fears, embraced their vulnerabilities and discovered unexpected growth in their personal lives, careers, or businesses. This is a space for deep listening, open hearts, and soul-nourishing conversations. Because when we meet ourselves in our rawest moments, that's often where our greatest wisdom starts. Let's begin.
So hello and welcome back to another vulnerability, introspection and growth episode. And today I am so excited because I have the wonderful Clarey with me today. And I will start off by doing a quick introduction. Charlie is a marketing strategist who helps ex-corporate women build businesses that feel structured, strategic, and genuinely exciting to run. With 2 decades of experience leading multi-million pound marketing projects for global brands including Coca-Cola, Cadbury, Disney, and Samsung, she brings a rare blend of corporate strategy and entrepreneurial heart to her work. A regular speaker and podcast guest, she's passionate about helping women break free from outdated corporate conditioning and create a business that reflects who they truly are. Her work centres on empowering women to express themselves fully, build wealth with purpose, and use their influence to create positive change. When she's not supporting clients, you'll find her out walking her dog Doug, rowing, or hunting down the perfect flat white. She loves connecting with inspiring women, but avoids bad coffee at all costs. Great intro there, Charlie. Thank you for sharing that so that I could tell the audience a little bit more about you. Welcome.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited about today's conversation.
And Charlie and I have done little bits together, so I can tell you this is going to be an amazing session. And I always start by asking my guests 3 quick questions, just to help us tune in and know where this conversation might go. So Charlie, can you tell me what makes your story relatable for others?
That's a good question. I didn't think it was relatable until I started sharing it. I think that's the thing, because you think, yourself, it's just me. I'm the only one having these thoughts. I'm the only one having these feelings. I'm the only one going through these problems. And then you kind of start talking to people and they're like, oh, no, yeah, I totally get you. Oh, that resonates with that. Oh, yes, I've done that. And the more I did it, the more I was like, oh, this is powerful. This is it. So I think what makes it important and powerful to share is that other people are going through the same thing. And I think once you start talking about those things, it definitely helps me as well when you feel like you're not alone. We were just saying that about how it's tough to run your own business, but when you start sharing your problems and your struggles and your wins, you really want to sort of celebrate things. That's what we don't do enough. Then when you celebrate those things and talk to others, it gives me such motivation and excitement. So I think that's really important.
I love that. And I love that it's not just we tell our story and we feel affirmed by those who come back to us and say, oh, yes, that's me too. And we suddenly don't feel as alone in ourselves. But equally, they don't either feel as alone because they've made a connection. So, yes, absolutely. And who do you feel will gain the most from listening to this conversation?
Definitely the ex-corporate women, the people like me. I'm ex-corporate, worked in it for 20 plus years, loved it at the time. It's now I look back and go, oh, some of those things are a little bit not quite right. And you do get conditioned and slightly brainwashed, should I say, of like, that's how things should be and that's what it is. And it's only when you leave that space you go, oh, okay, yes, there's a different option, because I never thought there was. For years and years, actually saying this to a friend the other day, I went to a school and careers advisors, you went in and no one ever said, do you want to run your own business? That was never even an option. So it's like, oh, okay. So it's people that, have been in my position, but also I think not always have to be ex-corporate, just maybe had a change in career or a change in life and gone from one stage that was maybe quite strict or quite regimented, and now I've gone to another stage and gone, oh, okay, I've got a little bit more freedom. I get to enjoy my job. I love my job. And I was like, oh, I never thought I'd say that, but it doesn't feel like a job. I love doing what I do. So that's just helpful.
It's so true, isn't it? Hindsight gives you 2020 vision.
Yes.
We don't know what we don't know. And if we have, as you say, kind of been conditioned into a certain route, to step out of that can be quite scary.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
having a sense that it can be okay on the other side of that great
It will
leap.
be okay. Yeah, massively.
And what do you hope people will take away from this conversation?
I think that they can do whatever they want. Like you say, that change of like it is scary to, leave a corporate job or, do leave a bad relationship or leave something that you've been doing for quite a long time and then change into something else. And I think that's the thing. I love change. I was having a chat with a friend about this the other day. She was like, no, don't like change. And I was like, I so I think I want people to kind of take away that change something and change is for the better, I think. And it's not always a bad thing. And sometimes you're forced into change and it's not always your decision. But I think embrace change. That's what I want people to take away, whatever that is, whatever level.
It's fabulous because as human beings, we do tend to feel uncomfortable about change. But I think just because we feel uncomfortable about it doesn't mean we should avoid it, doesn't mean to say that it's I don't like the word bad, but a thing that is to be avoided because it's uncomfortable. I think, as we were kind of talking about a little bit before we went live, going through something like that is such a learning and growth opportunity that the discomfort, when you look back, it is negligible. It's actually part of that growth, and any growth is a little bit awkward. I remember my brother used to get a lot of pains in his legs. The doctors would always say it's growing pains. And I think growing pains can be those physical pains, but there's the emotional side of it and the inner pain of that growth, that stretching ourselves, that challenging ourselves. But yes, the things that we learn about ourselves through that process are so valuable. But just then to dive into our conversation, you spent 2 decades working with the major global brands that I mentioned earlier, and then you stepped away from that corporate life. Can you tell us a little bit about what prompted that transition and what the experience was like for you, particularly when you were starting out? It was the early days and you couldn't at that point maybe see what your future was going to be like. What was that like for you?
Oh gosh, it's weird when you say that back as well because it's a different kind of feeling. But yeah, it was 20 years of huge brands, and like I said, I really loved it. It wasn't one dramatic moment. It was like a slow feeling of not wrong. I was just uncomfortable. I wasn't fulfilled. I was just like, oh, there's just something here doesn't feel right. And then nothing really dramatically changed. I was doing stuff. But the thing, it was just, I was senior and I'm not very good at being bored. And I think that was the problem. I was, being knowing what I was doing, but it was just getting really easy. And the day to day was just really dull. And it was like, okay, I think I need to do something about this. And because I like change, I'll do other things. And I just remember just going into meeting rooms and feeling, is this it? Is this it? And that was just that question in my head all the time. And then interestingly, within the business I worked in, so when I worked for Samsung, there was a women's empowerment group, I think kind of was set up. I don't even think they had a name. And I volunteered for it because I volunteered for everything and I was bored, so let's do it. And it was just, something else to do on top of your day job. It was later on I found out it was a bit of a HR tick box. We're gonna have a women's group, we're gonna have a disabilities group, we're gonna have all these kind of ethnic groups. And it was like, okay, fine, that was all they wanted it to be. It was, this was quite a while ago, so it wasn't really D&I hadn't really kicked in that much. And it was brilliant. We got, I think there was 8 of us, 8 frustrated women working for the fourth biggest company in the world who wanted to make change. And it was like, oh my God, what can we do? We got so excited. And in the first, I think it was 3 months, we'd run 2 events. We started a mentoring program, we started a newsletter, and we were asking questions about policy changes and contracts and all sorts of changes. And HR came to us and said, can you slow down? And we said, why? And they said, well, you're doing too much. And we said, oh, sorry, what did you expect? They said, oh, we thought you'd have like a coffee morning and maybe a bit of a group session and some cupcakes. And we were like, oh, we've done that, but we've also done a lot more. And they were like, no, you need to slow down. I was like, no, you've opened the box there. And it was just brilliant. And that's what I loved of like, this is it. We can get some amazing women together and do something that, feels like making a difference. And that was the spark of me of like, oh, I still, still doing my day job, still doing that. But it just felt like, oh, this is what I want to do. And I actually asked the company, could I do this as a full-time job? And they said, well, it's not really a job. And I said, female empowerment in the fourth biggest company in the world is not a job. Okay. Then I looked around and thought, I can go somewhere else. And it was the same stuff, different logo. Really, it was just nothing. No one was taking it seriously. So then I thought, actually, I love marketing. I love the female empowerment side. Join them together. And kind of then overnight, I was like, I'm going to build a business. I'm going to say, I never thought I would run my own business. I've never even crossed my mind. And then I did. And I got a first few clients within the first couple of weeks. I was 6 weeks into starting. I'm still working, on this is on the side. And then I was like, this is it. I need to do this because I absolutely love it. So that was the kind of change that evolved into the change that I've got, which was amazing.
Such a fantastic story on so many levels. And I love that what that created for you and what it sparked in you. And from going from that place of a little bit bored, really, there's so much more. And your description of the discomfort sounded to me like feeling like I've outgrown,
Yes.
like a pair of boots that doesn't fit anymore. And you just, you're itching to take them off and stretch a little bit.
Yeah.
And then that opportunity came up and gave you, it was kind of like a catalyst. Well, suddenly you can expand, your horizons opened up, and then were shut down again in a way because you were asked to please calm it down a little bit, which is so telling. And particularly as you said yourself, fourth largest company in the world, empowering women isn't a thing, couldn't be a full-time job. So it kind of becomes a no. Yeah, absolutely. It kind of becomes a no-brainer. Well, if you're not going to do it, I am.
Yes, I remember talking to the first coach I ever had, and I was like, okay, so I've done the corporate thing, and she said, explain, your history. I was like, I've done the corporate thing, I've done this, I now understand I need to start a business. I was probably a couple of years into my business, and I said, and that's the pattern, isn't it? You do that corporate thing, you get fed up, you start your own business, and then you find the thing that you're absolutely passionate about. And she said, no, most people do the corporate thing, get fed up, and carry on, and don't ever leave. And I was like, oh, that's so sad. And that realization was just like, God, and this is why this, entrepreneurship isn't for everyone. But I just thought that was the natural progression. It was so obvious to me that's what I needed to do. I was like, oh, everyone gets this, don't they? And then I look around at friends who are still in the corporate world going, oh, no, it's not for everyone, is it? So yeah, it really was a light bulb moment for me. But I know it's not for everyone. You just think, gosh, that's so painful.
I think it isn't for everyone because self-employment isn't for everybody. Being an entrepreneur isn't for everybody. Though maybe there are other ways if they get to that point of boredom that they can, and maybe the companies nowadays, maybe some at least, are more open to establishing something that would allow for that. And people, depending on the company again, can go for secondment and try different things in different places or move to a different role within the company that's at a different level. But it does take a certain special something for people to become an entrepreneur. And I think listening into this conversation, hopefully people are seeing there are other options. It is possible. Just because my company doesn't do it, or I've got as far as I can go in my company, or my company aren't allowing me to stretch in the way that I feel drawn to, that's not the end of the line. There are other options. And one possibility, one exciting possibility is to step out. And yes, it's scary, and yes, it's challenging.
Yeah.
But it's something at least you can try. And if it doesn't work out how you expect, then maybe you need a Charlie in your life to help you. But yeah, it's that thing of knowing that, like you say, you looked around, and I've heard other entrepreneurs saying this as well, looking around and seeing, oh, actually, it's not the common pathway. A lot of people get to that point, but they stay where they are. And how much of a loss that is for them and for other people as well, because of the skills that they could potentially be using, but they're just not getting the opportunity to do so.
Mm.
Another thing that you've shared with me is, and which I love, is that you realized you had become the logo of the company that you worked for, rather than that space to be yourself and to explore and expand and utilize your skills and who you are. And that's such a powerful insight, I think. So how did you begin, once you come to that realization, how did you begin then to start exploring and bringing out who you are, the real Charlie?
Yeah, it was interesting. That kind of crept up on me as well. It was just a realization of you'd walk into, well, I've seen in the corporate world, you'd walk into meetings or conferences or kind of exhibitions or shows or something. And maybe you had a lanyard around your neck with your company logo on, but it felt like I had a logo above my head. And then they'd look at you and go, oh, you work for Samsung, or you work with Disney, or you work with, and it's like, those big names. And I get it, they're recognizable, amazing marketing. That's why we know who they are. Fabulous. But that's who I felt I was. So you go in and yes, you're representing your company and that was what you're supposed to do. But you can be completely entwined with the company and lose the you. And it's only now I can look back and go, oh, I'm definitely more me than I've ever been. And I don't have that logo. I have my own business logo over my head, but it doesn't feel the same actually. And it's a real strange experience once you kind of recognize that I have to pull myself away from that because it's not when you leave the job that you lose that logo as well. I'm years working at companies, I'm still associated with them. I still see myself doing patterns of behavior I did in certain jobs and certain companies. So it never actually goes, but it takes a while to kind of entwine yourself. And I think the way I've done it is finding your own voice. Sounds a bit cheesy, but it really is like, boom, finding it, but developing it. I didn't have my own voice. I'd worked for these companies for years. I was corporately brainwashed, I think is the phrase that I would definitely use. And knowing how to talk, for yourself, about your business, about your skills is a hard one because you recognize yourself with that company. I'm a so and so and I work for this company. Isn't you? That's your job title in the company you work for. They're two very different things. Whereas now I'm a marketing specialist and I help women, ex-corporate women, simplify their marketing. That took me quite a while to work out. And I think that's the thing is, developing your self-belief, really, really developing that and believing it. And I think that's been really it is hard. So I know when people start their own businesses and they go, I'm this. And you're like, but are you? And you're like, actually, I don't know what I am. So it took me a good couple of years to work out what I am and what I want to do and what my passion is. And so once you get it, I was like, oh God, I do want to help ex-corporate women like me, simplify their marketing, run businesses that they love because that's the purpose. So yeah, it definitely takes a while to find your voice, I think is the thing. And I wouldn't get anyone to kind of stress about it, going, oh, it's a thing I can do in an afternoon and then it's sorted. It really does take, a thing. And sometimes you go walk down one avenue and go, this is what I want. And then you're like, actually, that's not what I want because you don't know. It's like you just start afresh, even though you've got years of experience. You're new to this business. I remember setting up a business thinking I'm the newest newbie I've ever been. Like I've got no skills, no experience. And you have to I had a coach that reminded me, you've got 20 years marketing experience. And you're like, oh yeah, but is it enough? Is it enough? And you're never quite sure. So yeah, I think reminding yourself of your skills, really developing your self-belief, going with your passions, I think is a real thing. And then you develop and find your voice. And then, I mean, like this, I love talking about what I do now. You might have to rein me in later just to keep it here. I can talk about this all day. But actually, in my old corporate world, I didn't want to stand up and talk about phones and fridges and TVs. Like, that's not a thing I'm passionate about, but I had to do it. And that was part of my job. So yeah, it's very interesting. When you find the thing you love, you can definitely then go, oh, this is it. I can talk about that all day. And that's a bit of a key. Once you get that, then you're kind of ready to go.
Yeah, and I think initially, like you say, you might start off, this is my passion, this is what I'm going to do. And it might evolve over time as well as you're discovering where exactly is my passion. And you've honed that down to a very simple sentence. But yes, it's the skill, isn't it, that when you can make it look easy, a lot of work has gone into that. So your beautiful sentence there that encapsulates what you do and what you're passionate about and your why and all of those important things, I can imagine took a lot of blood, sweat and tears, effort, time. So again, to encourage people that it doesn't have to happen in an afternoon, overnight. This is something that evolves, and it's part of that process. And again, why working with a coach or a specialist is so valuable. I mean, you've mentioned coaches that having worked with a coach yourself a lot of times already. So yeah, and I've done that. I've worked with various different coaches to focus on different aspects of my business, and you learn so much from each one. And also being a solopreneur, you've talked about how that's so different from being in a large corporate, particularly suddenly going out on your own, just to have somebody there to reflect back to you and help you to see the things that of our own we may not see. And many ex-corporate women struggle with that and with confidence and sense of identity when they've stepped out of that world where they're a small fish in a big pond and all of a sudden they're all on their own. So when people come to you and you're working with them, what do you see most often, and what do you find is one of the commonest things to help them rebuild that self-trust?
It's interesting. It's a very female thing not to ask for help. So, and I don't care where you are, where you work, where you live, that is a very female thing because we do everything. Generalizing, I know, but I think generalizing because it works. We do everything, we can do everything. We're expected to do a lot of things. So what I couldn't possibly ask for help. So it's a big change, for a woman to ask for help or do stuff. And you just think, and I work with some really clever women, and you're just like, yes, you're really clever at some stuff, but there's bits where you really need to ask for help, but it's really not ingrained in us. It's like I'm doing everything, it's easier for me to do it myself than ask someone else. I hear all of these same kind of things. And then there's when you dig deeper into it, and I don't think this is the right word, but there's an imposter syndrome because if I ask for help, it looks like I've failed, or I'm weak at this, or I'm not very good at this, or I'm asking for help because it's I need the help, and it's like, oh gosh, so that self belief I think is a real big thing that I more work at. And I know I do marketing, but I think I do mindset more than anything because you can't market something that you're not you believe in. And I speak to lots of women who go, I run this business, or I do this, or I've got this product, and you go, okay, tell me about it, and then it's like, and then they get small, or then they keep themselves small, or they don't shout about it. It's like, let's work on your belief first, let's work about your mindset, and then your marketing is easy because then you know what you want to say, how you love it, what you want to talk about. So that side of I don't think it is the imposter syndrome because I think that denotes that there's a problem. Syndrome feels like an illness, and it's like not an illness. I think it's just a societal thing of just keeping us down, keeping us small. And then when you suddenly need to stand up and shout about a business, it's the hardest possible thing, which men don't always get. So I really do think it's a female thing. And I only work with women. I don't work with any men at all anymore. It's just great. I get to choose. But I think their self-belief is a real issue of just like, right, okay. And you need someone there, like you said, about a mentor and, a coach or something, of just like not telling you what to do or not telling you what to say. It's more of a reflection back or a reminder. I definitely had that. My coach had to remind me, you've got 20 years experience, you know how to run multi-million-pound marketing campaigns, and you can't feel like you can't write a social media post. And you're like, yes, that's exactly how I feel. He's like, and she's like, do you know how stupid and mad that sounds? And I was like, oh, well, yeah, when you say it out loud. So you need that reflection from someone. And I think that's the point of, I come off calls with some of my clients and think, done anything. But actually, I've asked the questions because I never give them the answers. The answers are always with them. And my job is to ask the questions to get the juicy information out of them and for them to then hear that out loud. And I think that's the biggest thing that it's like, that's what my job is. So, yes, I'm a marketing strategist, but I probably need to rethink how I talk about that.
And that's so true. We can't shout about, and it's difficult enough as it is, because particularly in the British culture, you don't get big-headed and you don't be proud and you don't talk big about yourself because then you're going to get knocked down. Mm-hmm. So it's finding that voice, finding that way of putting across who you are without sounding big-headed, because it can be done. It's sometimes easier through PR because that's somebody else shouting about you.
Yes.
But you do need to be able to stand up confidently in networking and selling, but also seeing that obviously as serving. But we're always selling something, aren't we? We're always trying to convince people of something. Just that, oh, let's go and see a movie together, or let's go for a cup of coffee, or whatever that is, to help someone else see the value of that. And that's basically what we want to do in our work life as well. So, yeah, and I totally get that about the imposter sense of being an imposter. And I think for women, if they've worked in a corporate world, which is largely still a male dominated environment, that sense of I can't speak up as a woman because there's still a sense that you're the person who was the secretary role and now you've been allowed into the boardroom or whatever. And we don't, maybe some do, some have got to the point where they can, yeah, very much so. I have every right to be here and I feel like I belong here. But I think there's still a lot of women who don't. And like you did that body language thing of we make ourselves small and we apologize or we over explain or over justify, which adds to that sense of being small and possibly making us look small to the other person as well without us really realizing we're trying to do the opposite, but it kind of backfires in some sense. So yeah, it's all so interesting.
It was just interesting about what you said about the Englishness, because my last job was a European job, so I go to all the countries, and it was interesting to see the dynamic between Germany or Italy or France or Spain, and that was interesting. But actually, 2 years ago this month, I was living in America, and the sense of, no, I wasn't saying entitlement, but just kind of, I can't even think of the right word. So I went to America and was living there for a few months, and I went to some networking events, and it was just like, I'm going to be brave. I'm going to do it. I'm going to be there. We were in San Francisco. It was fabulous, absolutely fabulous. But I joined a couple of networking events, and it was just really like, I don't know what it is. It's a very American thing of just they feel like they've been told for a long time they live in the greatest country in the world, and they believe it. And it's just like, wow. And it just actually that power. And at first you think it's arrogance or pretended there's an odd feeling, but actually it really motivated me. So I went to a few more events and a few more online networking things, and it was just brilliant. Just feel like they had such confidence in themselves. They really did. No, they weren't told or to believe. And this was only a women's group as well, which was interesting. Of like even the women just had amazing confidence. And the funny thing at the end of this session, they said to me, "We love your accent." Obviously, got an accent, but they said you sound so intelligent and so clever, and it is so different, isn't it, for them? And it was like they thought sounded intelligent and clever, and I thought they had just the most amazing confidence. So I just kind of merged them out while I was there and thought, use your Englishness, use that, and go in with the confidence they've got. And I absolutely loved it. It gave me a real boost actually, which was interesting. So I think as well, surrounding yourself with the right kind of people, I think that's a really big thing as well. Just like, right, find the people, because like we both said, this is a very lonely, very isolating thing. But finding the right kind of people that motivate you, encourage you, inspire you. I felt so different, even just going to an online networking meeting with a load of strangers I didn't know. But it really helped kind of go, oh, okay, I can do this, and then you go, yeah, you can do this because you just went and did it. So that kind of push again out of your comfort zone, doing what you think I didn't think I could do, that really helped. And then I came back to the UK and felt really inspired. So it's like, oh, okay. I mean, sometimes it dwindles. It's been 2 years, and I'd love to go back if they sort their politics and government out. But we won't talk about that. But it was just really like it made me think. Find your people, really is, because you can only do so much on your own. Like this as women, we don't ask for help, so ask for help and find your people. I think are my two biggest takeaways of that. Just like, and then you can do it. You'll surprise yourself at what you can do. I went into the middle of San Francisco, went to some networking events, found some amazing women, which I still talk to today. And you're like, I didn't think I could do that. Of course I could. Definitely could. So, yeah, definitely that's my advice.
It's interesting that you can't even find a word to
No,
describe some of the things you were talking about there because we just maybe don't have it in our English
it's not been
vocabulary.
invented.
And how the travel thing, if you go and experience other cultures and you suddenly notice that the way you think you should behave, because that is our conditioning, it's the way we've been brought up, it's the way of our society, or at least circles in which we've moved. When you move into a different culture, you suddenly realize, oh, that's not the way, it is our way, and perhaps aspects of that have not been serving me, but there are things in this other culture that are really
working.
They're speaking to me, they're drawing me, they're inviting me to play with them too. And I love that saying of you become the 5 people you spend most time with. So I like looking for strong female people that I respect and admire, and then kind of assessing what is it about them that I like. Sometimes it is confidence, that ability to just stand up and own your voice and your truth and speak it. Like, this is how it is for me. I'm not imposing that, pushing that on anybody else, but I'm not shrinking either. I'm just going to stand up and own what's true for me and share it in that way. And if you take something from it, that's wonderful. If you don't, equally, that's wonderful because you know what's true for you. So yeah, that I do that through reading and podcasts and watching videos, but equally through people that I actually know.
Yeah.
So yeah, and even just watching dramas, reading books. Ooh, I like that about that character. Can I bring some of that into my life? And what you were saying about confidence, I read a book years ago and it's on the reading list on my website, but I can't remember the names of the authors just off the top of my head. It's 2 women, written by 2 women. And they did that comparison as to why men often seem more confident than women. And their conclusion at the end of the day is that they aren't. There is no real difference, measurable difference between men and women, apart from how they are raised to behave and to express themselves. So men aren't necessarily more confident, but maybe they behave in more outward ways because that's what they're reared to do. Women are, and that yang, yin contrast of energy. But also, maybe I think men are encouraged not to question themselves to the degree that women, and to be that introspective, and whether that's a natural thing about being a man versus being a woman, whether it's a societal conditioning thing, but it's just interesting to look at those differences and see, well, what do they really mean? And should we really take them on board as women in the way that we do and let them hold us back versus, well, if men can do it and there isn't any actual difference there, I can do what they do. I might choose to do it in a different way. And I might choose to do it more with that, that idea of the masculine and the feminine and the yin and the yang. I might choose to do it with my energy, whether I see that as being a feminine thing or just, it's me. Because I'm different. Every individual has their own voice that you talked about. So it's all fascinating stuff to play with.
It's finding good role models. I think that's why women struggle. We don't see women running massive companies as much as we could, maybe definitely growing up, didn't in the 80s and 90s see those kind of role models. I didn't see females running companies, female VPs, and you think, oh, that'll change. And as I got into my corporate days, I was thinking this the other day, someone asked me this, I think I've seen 1 female VP, and that's shocking, in 20 years. And you're like, wow. And I remember when she left the company, I think I cried. I got really sad because she was replaced by 2 men as well, which was interesting. You're like, oh, interesting. And that I loved, actually. I think we still talk, and I did message her and she was like, you were replaced by 2 men. And she was like, of course I was. Is that it? And he's like, oh, but he was like, 1 female VP. And it's like, so if you don't see the role models, or you don't see people, like you say, doing the thing where you think, if she can stand up and do it, then it's like the comparison between men and women is too extreme. So if you see a man stand up and do it, you think, I don't think I can do that. Or with my definite experience, I don't want to do it that way. I don't want to be that kind of role model. And I know I definitely felt, I've worked in massively male dominated industries. So my role models were white middle-aged men, actually, if I can massively generalize. And it's like, I don't want to do that. But I found myself doing that because that's how you got ahead. That's how you got to that role. That's how you got to that level. And then when you see those other role models, it's like, so I think, you have to do it yourself so that you're showing, even if it's for you, you're showing someone else this is what you could become. This is what you could do. So someone else can see you. I think that inspires people, and it's quite infectious, like you say, about surrounding yourself people with the right people. It's like when you get the right people, you're like, this is amazing. You love it, but I think you need to see it. And I think that's the thing that holds us back is like, maybe you're not doing it for you, or maybe the confidence isn't there for you. But this is why I go on to podcasts. I stand up and speak so that someone else can go, well, if she can do that, then I can do it. Yes, you definitely can. Believe me, you definitely can. So I'm not always doing it for me. It's just to encourage others, and I think that's my kind of message.
Wonderful. And I think that is a good note on which to
Yeah,
draw things to
we
a
did
close
well.
because I certainly could talk about this for hours more.
I
I'm
could.
really, really loving this conversation, but we do have to try and keep it to a time frame that's more manageable. So thank you, Charlie. It's been a
Thank you.
really valuable and, for me, certainly most interesting and enjoyable conversation. Would you then please let all the audience who are desperate to know how to connect with you, would you tell them where to find you?
I spend a lot of time, maybe too much time on LinkedIn. So I would happily come and find me on LinkedIn. Happy to have a chat. Happy to connect with anyone. I put all of my info and information on there. So come and find me on LinkedIn.
Fantastic, thank you. So, if you have watched this episode and thought, gosh, I really need to connect with Charlie, do go take a look at her LinkedIn. I will include the links below. And if you've enjoyed this episode, if you'd like to keep following, don't forget to click that subscribe button. And maybe see you next time. Thanks for joining us. Bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Vulnerability, Introspection and Growth. I hope it's given you a moment to breathe, reflect, and perhaps even see your own story with a little more compassion. If you find this conversation meaningful, I'd love it if you'd share, subscribe, or leave a review. It helps others find their way here too. Until next time, take gentle care, and remember, the journey inwards is where the real growth begins.